Okay. Good afternoon, students. This is KM Prasad, Department of CSE, DBSIT KAVALI. Today we are discussing the concept advanced structured query language in database management system. It is comes under UNIT-2. Here in this one, in this advanced database management system or structured query language, the concepts are accessing SQL from a programming language, functions, procedures, and triggers. Now, the first concept is accessing SQL from programming languages. The SQL commands are accessed by using some programming languages like C, C++, Java, etc. But here, SQL is having only some of the features, like it can extract the data from the database. We can perform some many operations. We are using high-level programming languages like C, C++, Java, etc. Now we can use the SQL queries in a programming language also. A program can construct a SQL query as a character string to runtime. At runtime, at the time of running, it can create a character string as a query and it is sent to the database for extracting the data from the database. And after getting the data into the programming language, it can use it for the further process. It can send to the database server to get the required data and some of the operations they are performing. Now coming to the next one is JDBC and ODBC or ODBC and JDBC. Here we are using some of the application program interfaces for a program to interact with the database server. Some API packages or API classes we are using to interact with the database server. An application makes calls to the connect with the database server, send SQL commands to the database server, and fetch some set of tuples or set of results one by one into a program variables. These things are performed by using a set of classes which are provided by the standard application programming interface. Those are also called as the API of any programming language. Now coming to the same JDBC and ODBC concept, here what is actually the JDBC means? All the things are performed. What is actually JDBC means? Java database connectivity. It is all called as JDBC. It works based on the Java programming language. Now coming to the open database connectivity, it is also called as ODBC. In that ODBC, we are using a standard for application program to communicate with the database server. It is basically a standard to communicate with the database service. It is a open database connectivity is a particular standard which is especially used to communicate with the database server. The programming language will be communicated with the database server. Now coming to the applications such as GUI, graphical user interface, spreadsheets, etc. can use the ODBC concept. And then finally comes to the it works with the C, C++, C Sharp and Visual Basic also. We can use or we can include the ODBC and the JDBC concepts or especially ODBC concepts in C, C++, C Sharp and Visual Basic. Especially these are completely maintained by using the Java, the same thing by using JDBC. Now coming to the next concept and very important one, functions. Now, SQL, advanced SQL can provide functions. By using the functions, we can manipulate some set of things like this. Functions and procedures allow business logic to be stored in a database and executed from the SQL statements. Some set of functions or procedures we can create in SQL for the purpose of business logic or some of the operations performed on a database. These can be defined either by the procedural component of the SQL or by an external programming language such as Java, C, C++, etc. Now coming to the functions, what is actually the syntax for the function here is create or replace function, and then we are writing the function name and we are specifying some set of arguments and return type and return data type also we are specifying. Is here the declaration part is there and then execution part is there, and finally exceptional handling part also there. Now coming to the return value and end. Now coming to the functions here, already you don't know about the exceptional handling at that time. What is actually an exception mean? It is a runtime error which is provided by dividing some zero etc. by taking the sum of the data as a input. For that purpose, we are taking exceptional handling concept. It is also handled by using the SQL functions. Now here we are taking some program. Given string is palindrome or not, using functions. Create or replace function, some function palindrome, that is funpal str v varchar return varchar. Now we are sending one string and then we are getting it is palindrome or not. Is str1 varchar 2 of 15, some begin is there, some for statement here we are taking I in reverse. Here in the reverse order it can take, loop is there, and then str1 is concatenated with the substring of str I comma something, and loop return str1. Now here performing whether the given string is the sub, that means palindrome or not. Now here comes to the same thing, that is palindrome function. Here you just one function is there. In the function is used in the main program here. That is r is equal to fen palindrome of str. If the return value, return string and original string are equal, it can display the string palindrome or not. And here in the previous one here we are calculating the reverse function. It is reverse actually. Reversed string and original string are equal, then the given string is the palindrome. It can display the output as a palindrome. Otherwise, it can display the output as a not palindrome. These are also performed in, these are programming language SQL. The functions are executed based on the programming language SQL. That is also called as PL SQL. Now coming to the procedures. Now what is actually the procedure means? What is the difference between function and procedure means? Function can get some value written, but procedure cannot perform, cannot give the guarantee to return some value. But functions, we are sending some value to this one or one or more values, it can compulsorily return one value. But here comes to the procedure, it does not return any value, just it calculates something and it performs something. Procedures are used to perform a specific task and may or may not return a value, either return or may not return. Now, syntax for this one, create or replace procedure, procedure name and argument list. Here some declaration part is there, and then some execution part is there, and exception handling part also available, similar to the functions. These are the two different types of things we are going to perform some set of tasks, simple tasks or small tasks. Now this is here also one procedure we are taking. It is especially used to calculate the factorial, n in number and m out number. Here we are taking some set of parameters like in and out. Some of the values are for the input purpose and some of the parameters for the output purpose. Here fact number is there, begin some for loop we are taking fact equal to something and m is equal to fact. Finally, here n is for the input. We are taking one value to the fact 2 and we are sending out one value to the function which is invoked, the procedure which is invoked, this procedure. Now that is about the out, in and out. Here types of parameters used in procedures. Already we discussed about in and out. Here comes to this one, in parameter. This parameter is the default parameter and it is the same as a constant. It is the input parameter. It is similar to the constant. Just it can take values only. Initialization is must to parameter and the value of this parameter is unchanged throughout the execution of the program. That is, it remains the same. This value is unable to change. This parameter value is fixed. Now this is called as the in parameter. Now coming to the out parameter here. This parameter exactly same as the uninitialized variable initially, but during the execution of the program assigns a value to this parameter and this value is sent back to the calling environment. Already we discussed. In is just like a constant, but out is just like a variable. At the time of execution, we are providing, the procedure provides a value to the out parameter. This is going out to the calling, whether it is utilized, where it is utilized. At that position, we are sending the values this one. Now this is out parameter works the same as the return value of a function. Only one time assignment is allowed throughout the execution of the program. But for this parameter, just one time allotment is only allowed. If you allow more than one, it can display the error message. Now coming to this one, in and out parameter. Here this parameter is exactly same as initialized variable and during the execution of the program reassigns the value returned from the calling environment to this one. It works as a just like a variable. For just it can send the value to this one procedure and also return back some value back to the calling function or calling procedure. Now this is about the in-out parameter. Both ways we can use this parameter. Coming to the next very important concept is triggers. Generally, in database environment, we are preparing forms, reports, and some set of things. Now in the form, some buttons we are using, some set of components we are using. For those components, for example, some text boxes we are entering some values. After entering some values, just we are performing some buttons like sum or add, some difference, etc. For that purpose, one trigger is activated. That means whenever the button is clicked, one trigger is activated. At that activation time, one procedure is called after automatically, and that procedure can execute some of the things and return some values to the calling point. Now, this is a trigger is a database object here. A trigger is almost same as procedure. A procedure always requires explicit call for execution, but triggers are executed automatically when any triggering event occurs. Already here we discussed it. It is automatically executed when triggering event occurs, just like whenever you click the button or whenever you enter the data in a text box like that. Insert, delete, update are considered as triggering events of the database trigger. Here we are inserting, we are deleting, we are updating. These are the triggering event. At that time, before or after, we can perform some procedures for that purpose. Those are called as triggers. The events initiate the firing of triggers. Now coming to the advantages. A database trigger is a security object to provide security to the table like tracking the transaction. It provides some security. A database trigger is used to define the complex business constraint. It can also perform some constraints. A database trigger is also used to define the default values of the database table. You can also perform some default values, basic values default. Now coming to the same thing, triggers, parts of a trigger, trigger event, trigger type is there, and trigger restriction. We are performing some set of restrictions also. Now coming to the trigger event first. The trigger event is the time when the trigger must be implicitly executed. What is the time? Where, at what time the trigger is activated and executed. There are three triggers events usually used in a trigger definition: insert, update, or delete. So the trigger types here, before trigger may be defined to execute a trigger before trigger event files. For example, just you are going to insert the data. If you are taking before trigger, of before inserting the data, it is fired, it is executed. Now coming to the after trigger, executes after the trigger event occurs. For each row type of trigger executes every time a record is deleted, updated, and inserted. For each row, it is executed. For example, for each row trigger executes 10 times when 10 records are updated by an SQL query. If you update the 10 records, automatically 10 times it is executed. For each statement, trigger may be executed only once for any SQL statement. That is only once it is executed. Trigger restriction. It is when class added with the trigger definition. It is an additional event to the trigger definition. Now, if you are using when class, whenever that time occurred, that is the restriction. After, at that moment only, it is going to be executed. Now here we are creating the triggers: create or replace trigger, trigger name, before or after, insert or update or delete. That is a general form of this one. On table name for each row, when condition, declare some begin exception and then end. Now this is about the example here. Create table student. This one table here we are creating row number, name, course, and this one semester. Here we are using insert into some student 77 values. We are inserting some set of values here. Create table student backup, some roll number, name, and course, etc. And coming to this one, for based on the table, we are creating one trigger here. Write a trigger to backup a record or multiple records are added or deleted from the student 77 table. This comes here. Create or replace trigger, trigger 1. Before delete on student 77, before delete. If you are performing deletion, we are going to performing some triggering event. For each row, if you are performing deletion for each row, insert into student backup, we just already one student backup is the table which is available. Insert into student backup some values, just old row dot roll number, old dot sname, old dot course, and old dot colon old, and already existing values of the row, and end. Now this is about the trigger. Here we are creating before delete, before triggering we are creating. Before deleting that row, this trigger is initiated or activated and executed. It can perform it can take some backup. Using that backup, in future, we can retrieve the data which is deleted from the database. Now, this is the purpose we are using, especially for the security purpose. This is a very, very important concept, the trigger concept. The triggers are especially used in the SQL for the purpose of backup purpose, security purpose, and different types of purposes. Now this is about the first topic or first lesson in advanced structured query languages. Here in this one we discussed about the how we are accessing the programming language, the data to the programming languages, and then we discussed about the functions, we discussed about the procedures, and then triggers. These are all very important concepts. These are completely based on the programming language, structured query language. Now with this we are concluding this lesson with the final slide. Thank you.